This is John Bailey, the epic voice of Honest Trailers, and you're listening to the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. It's a Fangirls podcast with five-ish people. The tangents and squee will continue. Squee.
The tangents and squee continue all the way to episode 182 of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. And let's hope that this podcast doesn't go a little caca. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. So glad you could join us. Let's start off like we do every week, look on the virtual table and see who joined us this week.
This is Brittany in Bethlehem. This is Holly from Wisconsin.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Hello everyone.
Hello.
Chrissy may be joining us mid-show. We'll see. But in the meantime, as we teased last week, that we had something very exciting and special in the works for this week, we have not one, but two very special guests with us this week to talk a very exciting topic. I'm so excited. Childhood. I'm going nuts here. So anyway, I guess I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. So whoever wants to go first.
I'm Albie. I'm from the Quantum Leap podcast. And I'm Christopher. I am also from the Quantum Leap podcast. Hello, how are you guys?
Great. Fabulous. And if that wasn't a big enough hint, folks, we're talking Quantum Leap.
Yes. I loved your opening there, Rachel.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Just a little excited.
Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll keep the oh boys to a minimum. So, as we normally do, because we have special guests, news will be pushed aside, which it's been fairly quiet news-wise anyway, so I think we'll be okay. So we're going to jump straight into this week's topic, just because this has been on the list when we started the podcast. You know, we wrote down things that we knew we'd want to talk about eventually at some point. You know, there's stuff that we want to talk about right away, stuff that was relevant, you know, latest seasons of Doctor Who and Marvel movies and that sort of thing. But then we also had a list of stuff that's movies, TV shows that are from a time past. And Quantum Leap was right there at the top of my list. For me, it is a show that I remember fondly from back in the 90s when I was younger. So this was a topic that I discovered the Quantum Leap podcast. I don't know how long ago. You were definitely still talking about episodes in season 1. I guess really quickly, Albie, since the podcast started with you, just kind of give us a short little history of the Quantum Leap podcast and how the show kind of came about and how the show works.
Okay, well, it was one of those things where I was at work and I was listening to probably my 8th podcast that day. And I was like, I really wish there was a Quantum Leap podcast, you know, and I'd go through iTunes and look for a Quantum Leap podcast, because for me, it's always been one of those series like Star Trek, like Doctor Who, that was really huge in my teen years, and I've kept up on it as an adult, and I watched it over and over again. And at the time, the only fandom that was around really was Al's Place, the website, and there was no podcast. And I was a beginning podcaster. Heather and I had done a Terra Nova podcast for that one season it was on, and I was always fascinated with time travel, and I loved podcasting, and I was like, well, if there isn't a Quantum Leap podcast, I guess I'll make a Quantum Leap podcast. And that was basically it. So I just sat down with my wife, Heather, and we talked about what we liked about what we did on the Terra Nova podcast, what we didn't like. And we kind of had a format that by the end of that Terra Nova podcast that we got to, that we felt comfortable, move to a new Quantum Leap podcast. And then we just pretty much started watching the series. She watched, I think, one episode because we didn't want her to be ahead. Because, of course, I had seen the whole series maybe 5 times, you know, catching them here or there. And I did record them on VHS way back when. But we just started it, and I was kind of shocked that there wasn't a Quantum Leap podcast to begin with, but it like immediately took off. So there must have been so many other people that were searching for a Quantum Leap podcast, and they all found us. And I opened it up to everyone that wanted to help, and we started to get a big crew. And I think we have almost 20 people that actually work on the Quantum Leap podcast. And it just is something fun that I love to do. And that's how I met one of my best friends, Chris. Hi, Albie.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm like you. I listen to a bajillion podcasts, and I have different subject matter, and Doctor Who, and My Little Pony podcast I listened to for a while before they fell off the face of the earth. And I went looking for Quantum Leap, and yours was the only one that existed. And I think even now, if you type into iTunes and look for Quantum Leap, there's like maybe 3 or 4.
A couple more around.
Yeah, so it's still, as much as podcasting has taken off, Quantum Leap as a topic it's still a kind of a niche topic. But I started listening to your guys' podcast, and, along with the memories of watching, Quantum Leap, I really liked your guys' format, the way that you do things. Obviously, it's changed somewhat. It's grown quite a bit since you guys started. You would do essentially a recap and then talk about the episode and what you liked, what you didn't like. Eventually you started getting interviews. Now it's grown to 2-3 hours long, which I love. I love long podcasts. So I have no complaints whatsoever over the length of the show. And now you have things like Quantum Deep and Chris's radio segment, and
I'm the only one that likes that segment.
I like it. Talk about the vintage radios that appear in the episodes.
I like that.
We're very lucky. We have 3 co-producers, Chris, Juan, and Hayden.
Mm-hmm.
And Hayden are just dedicated to getting us guests. So that's how we've been so lucky. We have 2 people working full-time just getting us people from each episode, whoever we can. And it's just great to have Chris on board now. He's one of our main hosts, starting in this past episode, Runaway. Mm-hmm. And he's been doing an excellent job, and he's just a natural at it, and I love listening to him.
I do, too. I love listening to all of y'all. It's always fun to hear a new voice when you get someone new. It's like, oh, new person. How are they going to contribute? So I guess for our listeners who maybe have been living under a rock and have no idea what the heck we're talking about, they're like, okay, this show, there's a podcast. What the heck is Quantum Leap? For people who don't know, and if you don't, go to NBC. Go to Amazon, wherever your media is consumed, and look it up. But for me, other than Star Trek Next Gen, it is one of the first science fiction TV shows that I remember seeing. And definitely one involving time travel. So for those that don't know, it was a show that aired on NBC. It started in 1989. It actually just had it popped up on, if you had the Time Hop app, actually it popped up on the anniversary. It's like, on this day, Dr. Sam Beckett, vanished. And actually coming up in a few weeks is going to be the anniversary of the series finale. Which is a very interesting topic that is pertinent to your guys' show, but we will get to the finale and the controversy, quote unquote.
I think we solved the controversy.
Yeah, there's still a little controversy though with that, I think, or questions. Maybe that's more appropriate. There's still
always questions.
But is the story of this scientist, Dr. Sam Beckett, played by Scott Bakula. Dreamy, hello. That man is aged like a fine wine. He has the idea that someone is able to time travel within their own lifetime. So he creates Project Quantum Leap, and he uses this time travel and quantum leaps, and gets stuck essentially. And when he first starts out, the pilot episode, his brain is completely rattled. As Al calls it, Swiss cheese brain, and that's a running thing throughout the entire series. But the only person that he has communication with is a gentleman by the name of Al, who is a admiral in the Navy, who is tied to Sam's brainwaves, and therefore they can communicate with each other. Al has he appears in the form of a hologram, so no one else, with few exceptions besides Sam, can see him. And then Al has a hand leak, which connects him to a very smart computer called Ziggy, who has access to pretty much everything, newspaper clippings, magazines, access to every library in the entire world, so they can get information on everything. So, and then throughout the series, the whole idea is that Sam leaps into these different people's lives, and there's something wrong that happened in their life. He has to fix it to make their life for the better. And once he fixes it, he will be able to leap, but he can't get home. So that's the premise in a nutshell, give or take. So.
And is there really anybody out there that doesn't know that? It's Quantum Leap.
There might be. You never know. So no. I mean, I know when I first discovered the show, it had to have been probably not long after the series ended, but was already in repeats or syndication or whatever the proper terminology is. And it was airing on, when I was a kid, we had basic TV, but my grandfather had cable, and he watched me quite often after school and on the weekends because my parents worked, and therefore free childcare. So I would go to Papa's on the evenings and the weekends. He had cable, which was very exciting. Most of my childhood was spent watching Nickelodeon during the day and Nick at Night in the evening. So I watched a lot of I Dream of Jeannie and
the monkeys,
monkeys and everything. However, on USA,
yes,
right after Wings. If anyone remembers the TV show Wings,
one of my favorite TV shows.
Yes,
remember that one? Yep.
At least in my area, after Wings came on, this show called Quantum Leap, and I think I was channel flipping, and happened to stumble across onto USA Network, and I distinctly remember the episode was Miss Deep South, and all I see is this guy with a hairy chest in a cha-cha outfit.
Yep.
And I was like, what the heck is this? I need to watch more.
That was the famous Quanta Lagusta scene.
Yes.
From Deep South. Yes. One of my favorites. Yeah. I did a whole segment on it. So.
Yeah. And I was hooked ever since. And of course, this is the mid-90s. So there's not really internet or anything. I think I came across a book in a bookstore. It was printed by like TV Guide or something, and it was like a guide to the 100 best TV shows of all time or something, and Quantum Leap had like half a page with a short synopsis telling about how long the show ran and how many episodes there were and who the stars were. I think that the I don't remember if there was more than one image, but I know at least the one image was a shot of Sam and Al walking down the street from 8.5 months. From the episode 8.5 months, when Sam's in the dress and he's holding his back like, oh my God.
Yep.
Highlighted the entire page. Like, I love this show. And I held on to that book for years. I do not know why.
For those who might not know, 8.5 months was when Sam leapt into a pregnant lady.
Yes.
So that's why he was in a dress holding his back on the road. He was 8.5 months pregnant.
Yes. And felt every bit of it.
It's funny you mentioned that because that's the show that we just finished recording. We just put that main record in the can.
Yep.
And that's the next show that's coming up on the Quantum Leap podcast.
I'm excited to hear what people have to say about that one. Just because that particular storyline is one of those that's, I think people use as an argument of whether or not it is actually Sam's body leaping or it's just his aura. So
I think that and the one where he has no legs, those are the two that people use most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is when we were talking about 8.5 months, I still don't think they answered definitively whether it was his mind or his body leaping because the baby was such a wild card. And this might be a sneak preview of what we get into, me and my co-host Allison Pregler and Matt Dale. I think that they purposely kept the lines blurry so they would not have to be locked into body or mind going forward. They wanted to keep it malleable.
Yeah.
And I think there is plenty of wiggle room in 8.5 months because it turns out that at the end he's giving birth. The doctor sees a head of curls. Where's that baby coming out of?
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly.
I've never given birth, so I have no idea.
Mother leaps out, but Sam keeps the uterus and the baby, and somehow it connects to his bloodstream all right?
Yeah, well, first the baby's not there. Then Sam is somehow chemically connected to the baby. And then the baby is crowning in 1957. What?
That could might have something to do with the Jell-O with the onions. I'm not sure.
The Jell-O and onion, yes. Yes.
Yeah. You look at the situations and the different storylines that they touch upon in Quantum Leap, and some of them are just, you kind of have to turn your head and scratch a little and be like, what are they doing? But then they also touch on some serious, subject matter.
Yeah.
There was a I love the discussion that you kind of got into in this last episode that you just released with Runaway, talking about feminism.
Mm-hmm.
And you think Quantum Leap did a good job on touching on such a subject matter, considering it was a show that was pretty much ran by men. The stars were men.
Right.
It was produced by men. That sort of
For the
thing.
most part.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that I'm able to talk to Allison about this kind of stuff because I never know, being a man, I know this is made for, there's a certain amount of simpatico there. And I never know even if they're being as earnest as they possibly can, are they coming across as trite or condescending in any way? And when we were watching that Runaway episode, on multiple viewings, I realized that this really isn't about, it touches on feminism, but it was about the husband. And it was about the husband's journey to understanding that there are other ways to think. So it was, once again, ostensibly aimed towards like a female issue. But at the end of the day, it was very aimed at a male audience. And it's funny, Quantum Leap pulls that sleight of hand quite often, and they do it so well that you don't notice. I brought this up on the podcast once too. Albie, you might remember this. In Black on White on Fire, you have this neat trick where it's a biracial relationship. Buddy questions it. Oh, that's the one where he's the black guy dating the white woman. Well, no, it's Scott Bakula and Corey Knights. You got a 4-second mirror shot, but yet it's a biracial couple. And it's they were able to do things that were kind of dangerous, especially for network TV in those days, but do them very safely. Isn't that funny? That's just such a neat trick.
I don't think any other show could do it.
No.
No, not at all. So, yeah, I mean, there's always more to find with Quantum Leap, and I find that when people discover the show, they get hooked by the weird premise. Okay, who's this? Is he a ghost? My friend Joe thought that Al was a ghost for the longest time. He's like, that's that show where he talks to the ghost, right? And I was like, no, it's a hologram. And he's like, what do you mean it's a hologram? But once they understand the premise, you know, they get over that initial blush, and then they sort of get into the issues that the show explores. And it wouldn't have lasted this long if they didn't do it so well. So, I mean, they really do get into a lot of meaty issues, but it's always fun and entertaining at the same time. It's never preachy. It's never pedantic. It's just, I would be hard-pressed to name a show that walks as many lines as Quantum Leap did and did every one of them successfully, except for maybe Supernatural stuff. I don't think they ever did Supernatural stuff very well, but, you know.
It's a great show. I mean, it's equal parts comedy, drama, and art. I've watched episodes, and I've literally, in the space of 10 minutes, laughed so hard I couldn't breathe and then cry. You know, and shows can do that. My favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just that, and to me, I mean, it's been a long time since I sat down and watched the series, you know, full on. But I mean, the episodes that, you know, really stick out to me, even after all of these years, as painfully as that is to say, tend to be ones where there are some funny moments, like Miss Deep South, or 8.5 Months, where there can be funny things, but it's still a serious subject. But then there are some where it is kind of serious for pretty much the entire storyline, like the Lee Harvey Oswald storyline. So I think definitely that last season they got really in there with I think some subject matter, and definitely the Lee Harvey Oswald one is definitely up there as far as the seriousness of it.
Yeah.
The ending of that episode is one of my favorite endings of any hour of television ever. And we did a show on that. We broke our timeline again, and we went ahead and we had Chris and his podcast partner Skipper from the 11/22/63 podcast do a whole special on it, and it's really good. If you like that episode, you should check that out. But that ending, I talked to Don Belisario about it just because I was so, I guess, just in love with the whole concept of when you watch a time travel movie or a time travel television show, you always know really kind of how it's going to end, because you know, well, they're in this timeline and we know our history. And as a kid watching that, even as an adult, when I watch this episode now, at the end of that episode, he's not able to save JFK, but he's able to save Jackie. And my immediate thought when I watched that episode was, wow, I always thought she survived, so he did change history. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're suddenly living in Sam's universe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's me in so much because I was like, wow, what just happened to affect my memories? You know, for a half second I thought that, and I got chills, and it was an amazing ending.
Well, maybe we should give them a little bit more context, Albie, about you and me and how we met, how I came to the podcast. And because you mentioned 11/22/63, but when I first heard of the Quantum Leap podcast, it was the first fandom podcast I had ever listened to. My wife got me an iPod, and I said, what am I going to do with this thing? What's an iPod? And then I discovered I could listen to a show called Radio Lab, which I absolutely adore. It's a science show. So I had that on 24/7 in my iPod. Then I said, wait a minute, there might be other shows I enjoy. So because I'm a huge Quantum Leap fan, I'm a Quantum Leap author, I decided, let me see if there's something with Quantum Leap. And I discovered Albie's show. And I asked him, after listening for about a half a year, I got my courage up because I do a radio show here on Long Island where I do a monthly segment for a science fiction program that airs locally. So I said, why don't I try to do something like that for the Quantum Leap podcast? Albie takes all comers. It's almost like a wayward, the home for wayward podcasters over there. if you want to be part of the show, sure, it's a big boat. Come on in. It's a big tent, right? Mm-hmm. But through that, I decided, well, I'm really digging contributing now to podcasts. And then Albie got me on the phone with my old partner, Skipper Martin, because he wanted to do a show, another time travel show based on the upcoming Hulu series, the then upcoming Hulu series 11/22/63, which was based on a book by Stephen King in which a time traveler goes back to prevent the Kennedy assassination. Mm-hmm. And Skipper was kind of an expert on Kennedy and all that stuff. And it just seemed natural once we got that show off the ground to do a bonus episode where we did a Quantum Leap podcast, 11/22/63 podcast crossover about Lee Harvey Oswald. So we did that, and we even wound up going to Dallas all together for the final show of 11/22/63, and we recorded live in Dealey Plaza. And we went to Oswald's home there, and we went to the famous, the backyard where he took that famous rifle photo that movie JFK tells you is doctored, but it's really not because there are like 5 of them in a set. Mm-hmm. And, from there, 11/22/63 ended, and Albie, he was just toying around, and he just asked me, he said, do you want to do a special with Allison Pregler? She found, wow, Albie, I don't even know how did you contact Allison? Do you want to tell about that?
She contacted me and said, I have this really cool thing. Do you want to see it? And I was like, of course. And she showed me the preview of the stuff that she found, that she uncovered. If you don't know what we're talking about, the famous mysterious lost ending, alternate ending to the whole series of Quantum Leap that was rumored to be shot, maybe, and at least written, but denied by Don Belisario. Mm-hmm. It was a big deal. And there's a couple scripts out there. And Allison contacted me and said, I have photographic proof that the scene was filmed. And I still have goosebumps about the whole thing.
I just thinking about it, I get chills even after listening to the special you guys released, talking with Alice and everything, and I was like, the entire time I'm just like, oh my god.
Mm-hmm. Ended up chatting with her all night about it, and I like I said, I still have chills from it, and I said, well, this is really the biggest news to come out about Quantum Leap since the invention of the internet. Really, this is a big deal. She didn't realize how big it was. She knew it was big, but she didn't realize how big it was. I said, okay, we got to make a special. We got to do this. And we ended up getting Susan Dial back, who played Beth, Al's wife, in MIA and in Mirror Image. And it all just worked out. And the special that Chris and Allison did on it is amazing.
And we spoke to Susan because she's featured prominently in those photos, and she was a key part of that scene that was supposedly never filmed, but apparently it was. So I think the next biggest Quantum Leap story is when we find someone who discovers that lost footage and not just shots from a set photographer. Although when I say that, I don't mean to diminish what Allison found, because it is amazing. It's not just shots. I mean, they are amazing shots that actually prove that, this happened.
Yeah.
It's a huge coup for fandom.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard that show, but listening to Susan remember things as she's looking at the photographs live on the show, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Well, let's go back to the show itself, and I guess we can talk about the I guess the finale and how that kind of put a bookend, I guess, on everything, and how the show ended, and how that plays into, I guess, the overall mythology, to, I guess, steal from the X-Files, the overall mythology of Quantum Leap. Like I said, I think I didn't discover the show until after it already ended, so I didn't know how it ended for a while. So once I finally saw Mirror Image and it got to the end, and all you get is this plate at the end saying Dr. Sam Beckett never returned home, and I'm like, what? And I've been carrying that kind of frustration for 20 years.
Well, let me ask you guys, if we can go around quickly, like it or dislike it? Mirror Image.
I like it all except for the ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it all until we get to that plate.
Yeah. Like it, but the ending.
Yeah.
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 I liked it except that last title card. I like
Yeah.
it because there's something going on.
Albie, you there? You're breaking up. I'm sorry.
Hello, hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
That may have been me.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I really
And-
like the ending except for the last title card.
Yes.
I think
Mhm.
it's been perfect without it because you could fill in your own ending, kind of.
Mhm.
And, he saved Al, so happy ending. Maybe he's leaping, maybe he's coming home. But the fact that they told you every week, hoping his next leap will be the leap home,
Mhm.
and then at the end saying, nope. I remember crying as a teenage kid.
And I was, when did that air, Albie? 93?
93.
93. So I was a 23-year-old kid. And I was in college and I was watching it with my roommates. And they became fans of the show because it was the only show in that time of my life that I made time for because it was Quantum Leap. I loved it. And we all sat there with our mouths open saying, what the hell just happened? Because Mirror Image is kind of a dense episode. It's very obtuse, and they don't really hand feed you anything. And it wasn't until I saw it like 4 or 5 times that I think I got a handle on what it was about. And once I sort of accepted it for what it was, instead of what everybody wanted it to be, which was this Smaltz Fest where he leaps home, I said, this is maybe the best series finale I've ever seen. And the fact that Sam doesn't come home ever, it's because he chooses not to. And that is so Sam. He is such a giver. He just wants to go out and he just wants to keep helping people.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's the way I see it. And for that, I think it is so wonderfully in keeping with his character.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So-
you referred to him as a Boy Scout when you're talking about
Well, me
the
and
runaway.
Al. So.
Yeah.
In that order.
Yeah.
So explain it to me, Chris, because I'm still confused about the last episode. Did anything in that bar really happen, or was it all like a metaphor?
I think that bar was. I think that Sam is not the only leaper. And see, that's where I get a little confused. I think that bar was sort of like a way station for leapers that needed to move on to another phase of leaping, and that's why Stoppa was there, sort of trapped. He said, "I've been here too many times before." When Sam talks about saving Tonchi and Pete. So it means to me that Stop has been there and failed several times. And it isn't until Sam helps him and intervenes with him that he leaps and he disappears and nobody remembers who he was or that he was there. And what I saw that as is Sam at this threshold where the leaping, there would be an evolution of his leaping. It wouldn't be like it was before. He would have to go in solo, figure out what to do, and then when he was gone, when he accomplished his mission, nobody would remember that he was there, but the changes that he effected would stay. And now the bartender is only as long as you want to. You have the power, basically you have the power to leap home anytime you want. You can do whatever you want. There are no rules. There is no right or wrong. And that is spelled out very clearly. So the fact that it says Dr. Sam Beckett never returned home, it is clearly his choice that he didn't return home. And again, like I said, I think that is Sam.
If Bruce McGill is a god, time fate, whatever, does that make Sam and all those other leapers kind of like angels? Is that what he was going for, you think?
I don't know about that. I mean, I get sketchy on the metaphysical side of that because I was just looking at the pure character stuff. What was Al's place? Hell if I know. Is it always interesting to talk about it and to think about it? Eternally. Think about it this way, too. If Sam had leapt home, we wouldn't be talking about Mirror Image still. And here, what is it, 30 years later? And we're still yapping about it on podcasts.
So are all leapers time travelers, or is that just the way that Dr. Sam Beckett got into it?
I don't know. I don't understand the question.
Like, were all the other people like in the way station that were leaping?
I think
like,
some of them were. The guy who played Gushy.
Yeah.
He looked in the mirror. It was a different reflection. So I think he was there to do something, and maybe he hadn't done it yet or whatever. I think that they implied that there were others besides Sam there. Stoppa, obviously. Right. And I'm sorry, guys, if we're getting into the weeds on this. If your listeners have not seen Mirror Image, we've thoroughly spoiled it.
We kind of go with the more than a couple of years. The statute of limitations is running.
Yes, 30 years is the limit. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. What's wonderful about Mirror Image is, like I said, it's so complex and so dense that even if you know how it ends, you still don't know what the hell just happened.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I'm amazed that, I mean, I think it's awesome that Allison, found these negatives and was able to develop them so that we can see them, and they're, for what they are, they're beautiful images for being as old as they are. I know she says that she does do some, cleanup work, scratches and dust and that sort of thing. But I mean, it's very obvious what, if you know Quantum Leap, what show those images are from. There's no mistaking that is Al and Beth. But what, and obviously, you guys talk to Susan, but the fact that even now, as far as we know, Donald P. Belisario is still adamant that a alternate ending never was going to happen. It was never filmed. It was never written. And we have evidence that says otherwise. Why do you think, it's one thing for Susan to be, she's, after 25 years, almost 25 years since the finale aired, her memory may be a little fuzzy, but why is Donald just so adamant that this alternate ending does not exist?
It's a mystery why he is so cagey about it. I wish I knew. One of our listeners actually wrote a letter saying, now in face of the new evidence, are you brave enough to ask Don to confront him with it and ask him what the heck? And I answered back, yeah, I'll ask Don anything. I don't care. Yeah. What can he say? Yeah. Shut up, go away. I mean, oh no, and then we're right back where we are right now. But it is a mystery to me why he is keeping it so close to the vest. Knowing Don, he's got a good reason, because he doesn't seem to do anything that he doesn't want to do. And he seems like he thinks everything out very thoroughly. Yeah. That's just an impression that I get. I mean, I met the guy once during a convention. He was a really nice guy, but, he really seemed like, the boss.
I've been thinking about this for the last few weeks since the story broke. And what he told me is he wanted to be remembered for his Quantum Leap. And it was that was his masterpiece, his art, And I'm thinking he's an artist and he wanted to shape the story like he wanted to. So he might have gone in one direction and decided that's not what he wanted. And it's not the art that he wanted to present to the people. So it's not his finished work, and he doesn't want it to exist, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. That's actually the best explanation I've ever heard to date. Yeah. You're a smart dude.
Now, were they on the bubble, or was there chances that they were going to get renewed or canceled?
The story goes
about that.
Yeah, the story goes that they had the show in place, and it wasn't until like the night before it aired that they got the word that they were going to be canceled. So this season finale turned into a series finale, and that's when you got that.
Jordan.
I've never seen that, but that's when you got that title card. That's when you got the ending with just the two, the 2 or 3 title cards.
We kind of have that confirmed from the guy who worked at the Post Department that said it had a different ending, and that title card wasn't a part of it until it actually aired. So that kind of verifies that it happened very last minute.
Okay.
Yeah. And, I mean, it really does put an end to it. Dr. Sam Beckett never returned home. Mm. That's it. That's a definitive ending. I think that because the alternate ending that we're talking about, in case listeners don't know, is at the very last shot of the show is a picture of Al, young Al, shot of Dean Stockwell, and a leap effect takes it, and the picture leaps for some reason. And then it just fades to black and you get those title cards. But there was an alternate ending where that picture transformed into a picture of Alan and Beth as an older couple with 4 daughters. And I think that if they had left that on there, that kind of that leaves you dangling. That says, well, okay, so he fixed Al's life. Where do we go from here? Mm. Well, with those title cards, they tell you that he fixed Al's life, and oh yeah, he's never coming home. So I mean, boom, that's the end.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason why they maybe did it that way instead of keeping that original photo leap as an end.
Yeah. I wonder a little bit too, if maybe the fact that Don is just, doesn't want to acknowledge an alternate ending because he still wants to bring the show back in some form or fashion. There's word out there that he's penned a script for a movie or a reboot of some sort, and by kind of keeping that other ending in the dark, that leaves him some wiggle room for a potential reboot or sequel series or spin-off or something. I don't know, I'm spitballing there. He wants to keep his options open, I guess.
It purposely open-ended.
Yeah.
So Sam is still out there doing good. He's still out there leaping. So if other leapers come into the picture, who says they can't run into Sam?
Yeah.
What I like about that is that it doesn't have to be a reboot. It can always just be a continuation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And you did discuss the idea of a reboot versus a sequel versus whatever, when talking to, discussing the feedback you guys got in this last episode that came out, Runaway. And I can see arguments for both, but I think it was Allison that said, it's really just a matter of time. It's not if, it's when, just because everything is getting rebooted, everything is getting brought back. So
unfortunately, reached the age where he doesn't, he can't anymore. And, that just leaves, the pair of Sam and Al wouldn't be there anyway. So,
yeah.
And because I'm sure Scott Bakula's got a couple more decades of TV in him, and but I think the idea that they were talking about where Sam Beckett might be in the pilot of the continuation or reboot or just hop in here or there is great but it's a great story premise, and you can literally have as many leapers as you want and go crazy with it, and like Doctor Who, switch them out, when.
Yep.
But I guess back then they never thought of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even Scott has said, if for some, the best happens for the fans, and they do decide to do New Quantum Leap. I saw him on stage. He said, Dean and I wouldn't be a part of it. We're too old. They're not going to want us. So, I mean, he looks at it with eyes open. He's realistic about it. Cameo, he said a cameo thing maybe or something like that, but it wouldn't be us.
Yeah. I kind of see like a Power Rangers situation with the movie, where it's because that's one of my other big fandoms is Power Rangers from childhood, and Power Rangers movie that they did a good job of paying homage to the source material while still updating it for a modern audience and modern era and modern technology for filmmaking and everything. But then you got a nice cameo from a couple of OG Power Rangers in the movie.
That was a good movie. And
bada bing, bada boom. There you go. So I think if they treated it kind of like they did with the Power Rangers, then I would have no problem with it. Because as a Power Rangers fan, I had no problem with this reboot. This new movie franchise. As much as I held fond childhood memories of the original series, I was not offended by this new era of Power Rangers. So,
I could tell you this, I have every message that people message on Quantum Leap Facebook, and we're pretty much the official internet representation, us and Al's place, and I get notifications on my phone 3-4 times a day from different people. When are they doing a movie? When are they doing a reboot? Are they doing a new series? I literally get that question 3, 4, 5 times a day. So I think the hunger is there and the fandom is there. Just Universal and Belisario Productions have to come together and agree on what to do. And unfortunately, it looks like they're not doing that. And they might have to wait until the rights go from Belisario's Productions, maybe back to Universal totally, or someone else, before they actually can do something with the property. So it's kind of like in limbo, and it's very sad.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with you on that one, Albie. I think that Quantum Leap exists in a complete state. I don't know that we need a reboot, even though one is inevitable. And as you know, I've argued against the idea of doing a reboot on TV in the current TV environment, because I think TV has gotten so caught up in the idea of anti-heroes and darkness, like, say, Breaking Bad. I think that maybe the pendulum's starting to swing back, but I think, especially in very recent years, a Quantum Leap reboot would not have been as optimistic as the original series. It would have been Sam or who's ever leaping forced to make Hobson's choice. All right, if you do this, this is going to screw up. Don't do this, this woman's going to die. And it would be like gritty and weird like that, I think, because that's just the current zeitgeist in entertainment. I want that to abate somewhat so that we do get Quantum Leap true to the spirit of the original. And that's just my speculation. It's my supposition. It's what I see on TV time and time and time again. And I just don't know that Quantum Leap is the right fit for the current entertainment environment.
Well, what if that did happen? What if they went like the Discovery route with Quantum Leap? Would you still watch it and get into it? Or?
I would watch it. Whether I got into it, I don't know. I mean, it would depend on the story. It would depend on the characters. It would depend on how well they did it.
It's almost like a masterpiece. You don't go back and make Casablanca 2, right?
Electric Boogaloo.
That would be good. Breaking 2 is highly superior to the first one, by the way.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever read any of the Quantum Leap books? I mean, how deep does your fandom go? Because, Albie and I could sit here for the next 3 hours talking about just Mirror Image, much less Quantum Leap.
I never knew about the books until I quick did a search.
A search, like last week?
Yeah. It's like, I might have to look into those, see if there's any available at the library.
They're pretty good. The one I recommend out of all of them is Foreknowledge.
Okay.
Some jerk named Chris wrote that one. Yeah.
I owned a couple of the books back in the day. I had Too Close for Comfort and
that one was not about a cow puppet that wrote comic books.
Yeah.
With Ted Knight. Oh boy.
And I can't remember the name of the other.
Should we just start naming them off, Albie?
I can't remember that. I'd almost have to see a synopsis because I know the one Too Close for Comfort is where Sam leaps into it's like the man's bonding group with a young owl.
Yes.
And then there was a book about it's like at a circus or a carnival.
That was called both The Beginning here in the States and Carney Knowledge in the UK edition.
Okay.
That was the very first Quantum Leap novel by Ashley McConnell.
Okay. And
I think Too Close for Comfort might have been the second or the third.
Yeah. And then I own those, and then I at some point between moving and getting married and purging, I have no idea if I still own those and they're just in storage somewhere or if I've gotten rid of them. But I did pick up Knights of the Morning Star.
Melanie Ron.
Yeah, late last year, and then I read that a couple of months ago. So
cool. Yeah, I think that one has Aaliyah in it. That has the evil leaper.
Yes.
In it.
Yep.
Yes.
They're really good to read after you finish binging the whole series because you get psyched up for it. So
yeah. So now, and those are not considered canon?
They are not. As an author in the series, when I was pitching my book, there were things that you were allowed to do, not allowed to do. Like, you weren't allowed to have Sam die, say.
Right. Yeah.
But basically, they were one-offs. It was like a standalone episode that would not be considered canon. And the model of that was pocketbooks and their Star Trek novel series. Growing up, I read tons of Star Trek books, and I always wanted to be a Star Trek novelist. And when the Quantum Leap series came out, I was in college. I think I was a junior or whatever, but I saw it on the shelf, and I said, this is it. It's Quantum Leap. I want to see. So I got to know the editor of the series, and I pitched her a couple of stories before they bought my book. But they're all considered standalone stories, not canon, because in a book, you can explore different ideas. But if they consider it canon, then okay, well, can they do that on TV then? Mm-hmm. They want to save some ideas for the TV show. At the time my book was published, the show was already off the air. As a matter of fact, on the cover of my book, it went from the hit TV series Quantum Leap. It said the cult hit TV series Quantum Leap, because it had been off the air for about a year or so at that point, or probably longer. Who knows? This was all 100 years ago, so I don't probably hazy on the dates. But it was just like the Star Trek novels, because there were so many of those. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of Star Trek novels. Mm-hmm. You can't worry if they're all canon, because how are they all going to fit together? Yeah. So yeah, they're just basically one-off adventures. Okay. And I hate to say this, but it's 1,000 years ago. One of the reasons I really felt compelled to write my book was because I didn't like a lot of the novels in the series. I didn't think that they captured the voices of Sam and Al as I heard them in my head. So I said, well, let me see what I can do. And I was happy with the way mine came out, but it's because it jived with everything I thought the series was. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say I didn't like any of the other books. I liked a great many of them, but I just never thought that they got the characters quite right. And I'm sure people say that about my book. Well, I don't know. I like this one a lot better. But that's one of the pleasures of reading the books too. You get to see a lot of different interpretations of the show, and some might be closer to what you like about the show, and some might be worlds away. Like, what is this guy on Pluto? What the hell is he writing here? But it's just another way to experience the show, and if you've seen every episode, it's also a way to get something new.
Yeah. It's that extra season almost.
Yeah, and I imagine that the books. Well, we were talking before you guys hopped on, the fact that there's 5 seasons, it's 97 episodes, so they didn't quite reach that 100 episode milestone that's, a big deal now with a lot of TV shows. But the fact that it ended so abruptly, and I imagine it's probably what like the Doctor Who fans felt when it ended. Which, considering the timing, that probably helped with Quantum Leap. The fact that it started about the same time that Doctor Who, the Wilderness Years, started. The sci-fi time travel fans were probably like, "Oh, time travel."
That was my first lesson. That if I like a TV show, it's probably going to get canceled.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
that's for sure.
Yeah, we've experienced that a few times.
Oh, yes. For me, it was comic books. Any comic book that I liked eventually just got canceled. Yeah. After like 12 or 16 issues. Yeah. So I stopped reading comics because of that. I was putting too many artists out of work.
At 5 seasons is much better than a half a season of a show. So
that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, but if you're a fan of something, we get to the. There's a certain mindset with fandom that, like, I'm going to gobble up whatever I can get my greedy little hands on. And that's probably why I held on to that silly book from TV Guide for as long as I did, where it had, at most a page in this thick book with a bunch of other TV shows I never heard of and couldn't care, didn't care about. But because it had one page about this one show,
You might have to scan that for us because one of the co-hosts of the podcast, his name is Matt Dale.
Yeah.
And he wrote a reference book called Beyond the Mirror Image, which basically chronicles every episode of the series in just exhausting minutia.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a lot of ephemera like that included in the book. I would say he probably got his hands on something like that, but he's always looking for more stuff.
Yeah.
And like Allison's discovery was huge.
Yeah.
He had to, he's telling me now I have to go back, write a whole new appendix, because it shifted so much.
Yeah.
But one thing that Matt did do, which surprised me, because I interviewed him about it for the podcast before we started co-hosting together. This was a couple of years ago when the book came out. He included the novels in his timeline of the series as if they were canon, because he figured nobody's making more Quantum Leap. We can make this stuff fit in. It's all there for the fandom. So why not?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a nice spin on the book, because a lot of these, even if they're unofficial companions, they stick to canon. They stick to what's on the air. And I guess another thing Matt had going for him is that I think there are maybe 19 novels in total. So there was a finite amount that he had to deal with, which probably made it much easier to incorporate what happened in those novels in his timeline and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but
the only thing there is comic books, right?
He probably included those too.
I
think there are 12, right? 12 or 13?
Something like that. Depending, different covers, but yeah, 12.
Yeah, and those are the Innovation comics. Mm. So I'm still about 4 issues short of a complete run of those. But I'll find them, damn it.
The easiest way, complete set.
Yeah.
Type it in.
Yeah, no. To me, it's the thrill of the hunt. I look at all the bargain bins and the dollar bins at comic stores. Whenever I go someplace new, I look for a Quantum Leap comic, and I've come across more than you might think. So,
well, that works out for me, because if he finds any Alf comics, he sends them my way.
Albie, I have about a box of 15 Alfs sitting in my garage waiting to send to you. So maybe I should do that this week.
When you go to mail out your taxes,
Like the Christmas story.
take that along with you.
So yeah, as you can tell, Albie and I nerd out about a lot of other stuff too. So
yeah,
You can talk something comes up. So
I imagine we could probably have some fun down the line. Have you guys come back for something? Pick something.
Well, we'd love to.
No.
One thing I can do is talk into a microphone.
Read the phone book and be happy.
Us too. I mean, that's the whole reason this show started, is just we would hop on. Well, we were using Google Hangouts, but our first conversation was 4 hours talking about the Doctor Who 50th anniversary special. So
I wrote an article about that one. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Raised a lot of questions, a lot of strengths, a lot of weaknesses, a lot of weird Stephen Moffat shenanigans. But
yeah,
I watched it a few times that night.
So can I ask the hosts a question? The
Absolutely.
the 5-ish?
Sure.
Even though it's the 4-ish.
Yeah.
Can you give us your favorite episode of Quantum Leap?
Oh.
See, very apropos.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
like asking a favorite child. Oh my goodness.
Rachel, you gave the title for me. It was the favorites.
I think my favorite, is To Catch a Falling Star.
Great music in that.
Yes, just because it gives Scott a chance to show off some of his singing chops, which the man is he's a triple threat. He can sing, he can dance, he can act.
I went to go see a local production of Man of La Mancha just because of that episode.
Yeah, I kind of got obsessed with the music, and I was in high school, I think at the time, and I think I asked my drama teacher why we couldn't do that as a production, and she's like, "'Cause it's not appropriate for high school." It's like, but the music is so good.
Yeah, it was so fun and light until it got all rapey. I was really surprised.
Yeah.
ruins a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of does. Oh.
But we digress. I think there are two more answers out there.
Well, one.
I really like. Just not here at the moment. I can't remember the name of it. It's the boxing one.
Right Hand of God.
Yes.
Yes.
And you guys are going to hear it first here because I don't think I've ever asked what his favorite episode of Quantum Leap is.
That's difficult. I have my top ones. MIA is in there, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, that is a show that kills me every time, brings me to tears.
Yeah.
Mirror Image is good just for the same reason at the end and how it ties into MIA for me. But other than the two main ones there, I'd have to go with the two-parter Lee Harvey Oswald.
Really?
Yeah, it just... when I was that age, I was obsessed with time travel and Quantum Leap and the JFK assassination. I was a big conspiracy theorist on everything back then because it seemed funner or more fun. It seemed more fun than the truth. So that just all culminated into me just loving that. And I had recorded it myself at home, and I watched it endlessly as a movie. So I think that sticks out for me as one of my favorites.
Cool.
Well, what about you, Chris?
I mean, I have my favorites, of course. Shock Theater and The Leap Back as a double episode probably was my favorite for a very long time. Yeah. I love Mirror Image, but I think if I had to just like a regular Quantum Leap episode, my favorite is Nuclear Family. And that's the one about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Mm-hmm. And the reason I love that one so much is because when I was growing up, there was this show called Night Flight on USA Network late at night. It was when I first started watching weird cult fringe stuff. And they played a lot of the old 50s A-bomb footage and Duck and Cover. And I was just fascinated with that and all that Cold War stuff. And when I saw Quantum Leap's take on it, I thought it was really amazing. I loved it. So anytime I think of what is an episode that I always want to go back to, it's probably Nuclear Family. And I don't even know if people especially remember that one, but it just speaks to me personally a little bit. Plus, they got a lot of neat radios in it, too. I took a look. I think there are about 3 of them. So...
F you, Chris.
We've been keeping it family friendly. Are you guys E-rated or?
No, we try to keep it PG-13. So
okay, perfect, Albie, perfect. Now the reason Albie said F you, Chris, just to give you guys some context, is when I was doing my other show with my partner Skipper, 11/22/63. And then we moved on to a Castle Rock podcast. But anytime there was a radio, because I do the Quantum Leap radio settings, because 11/22/63 was a time travel show, anytime we saw radios in that, I would try to identify them and date them and see if they were anachronistic. And Skipper, as he was watching the shows, he said every time he saw a radio, it just pulled him right out of the show. And he would think, F you, Chris, because you just ruined this for me. So on our show... the radio sightings became F you, Chris. And we almost sold T-shirts that said F you, Chris. And it became like a catchphrase.
Except so family friendly.
Yeah.
I was never so happy to be cursed out on a regular basis.
Now, thinking the radio comes up, I'm like, and then I send him a picture of it because of it.
And then I'm like, F you, Albie. What do I'm now your personal radio valet identifier. It's like,
someone on the Rockford Files the other night, and I sent you a picture.
And you sent me the one at the beginning of Back to the Future. So
that is the radio I want now.
There you go. So, yeah, I've given Albie the bug. So now if any of your listeners see radios and you get taken out of the show, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I kind of say that to myself now, because now that I've gotten into cosplay, I can't watch anything without looking at the costumes and at least picking out one outfit where I'm like, ooh, I kind of want to cosplay that. And I'm like, dang it. I do not need to add to my list of things I would like to cosplay.
Right? It's crazy. And since I started collecting radios 20 years ago, who knew that it would turn into like an on-air obsession?
Yeah.
It's just nuts. And no, like I said, nobody cares but me.
Yeah.
But Albie lets me do it, so I do it.
I find it endlessly interesting.
It's the only other person on the planet.
I like it. I like the segment, so
Good.
you got another
I'm
person
happy.
in your corner.
It gives something people to look forward to when they're watching an episode of Quantum Leap, if there's any radios.
Yes, exactly. Well,
And I always look forward to the music.
and that was the
What
segue.
songs are they going to pick?
That's the segue I was gonna go with, because the music in Quantum Leap, aside from the theme song, which is iconic, that's right up the Doctor Who theme, I think. For me is how much music is, and not just your kind of mood music that you expect with a lot of TV shows, but popular music was used in Quantum Leap, even in episodes where it's not necessarily, obviously something like Good Morning Peoria, or you're working at a radio station. Popular music, obviously, a very important part of the the environment that Sam has leapt into. But for anyone that is maybe listening and is now piqued their interest into going and watching Quantum Leap, this would probably be the point where we probably want to warn them that the music is not all there.
Nope.
The way it originally was, and that's kind of I think a sore spot for those of us that caught it on TV.
Well, Albie, you found a way around that, right?
Well, there are many ways. I'd say if you see the Region 1 DVDs, the originals ones that came out, just don't even bother getting those, because that's mostly all music replacement. And everything that came out, like incrementally. Incremental. Oh, man.
In pieces.
Everyone has that one word.
Little by little, they got better. Not replacing the music. And I highly recommend the new Blu-rays that came out. That set, I've yet to be taken out of an episode because of a music replacement. I haven't found one myself. I don't know if the official list is there, but every episode I've watched, the music's included. But I haven't gotten to Glitter Rock yet on the Blu-ray set, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But Glitter Rock had a lot of original songs, so...
Right? But I know that's...
I mean, they were mostly terrible, so you want the music to be replaced in that episode.
Rock the Redhead? That was bad.
To me? I can't wait to talk about that on the podcast.
You might have to have me on for that. But the Blu-rays are pretty good. The one we just watched not too long ago, Rebel Without a Clue, the music was spot on the whole episode, which makes a complete difference from the DVD Region 1 set that came out, which was pretty much all replaced, and it just changed the whole tone of the episode.
Yeah. So, well, and I can't speak for others, although from what from the grumblings I've heard of the fandom, I think for the most part, most of the music replacement isn't that big a deal until you get to a particular episode with a particular song. So,
I know what she's talking about.
Yes.
She's talking about the most sacrosanct scene in all of Quantum Leap.
Oh my God. Yeah, I remember watching it on the DVD, and I'm like, what, wait,
where's Georgia?
Where's Georgia? This is not right at all. I mean, of all the songs that, I know getting the rights to songs can be expensive and exhaustive and a pain in the butt. But I mean, of all the songs that I really think they should have fought for.
Yeah.
To make sure that they could keep that when they go to start releasing stuff on DVD. I mean, just. Ugh.
Well, you gotta remember that back when they were doing this, I don't know if rights issues and DVD releases were apparent yet. It was still an evolving relationship, and now I have to think that they buy the rights in perpetuity so that when there is a DVD release, they can keep everything intact. But back then, it wasn't something they thought of. So it became a much more contentious issue because the studios want to turn a profit on these DVDs. And if they're sinking an extra who knows how many millions of dollars into keeping all of these songs, then their profit margin gets that much slimmer, especially for a show like Quantum Leap, which is a popular show. But it's no Star Trek.
Yeah.
Right.
So you got to think that they're already seeing this profit margin as razor thin anyway. I mean, it took how long for a Blu-ray set to come out, and that's not even from Universal.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's really, you know, it's the bean counters at work, and they have to say what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. It's the same reason we don't see Deep Space Nine or Voyager in Blu-ray. Because of all the effects works that they would have to recreate. It's just they don't think the money is there. So
hopefully one day.
I hope so too.
Yeah. You have to think there's probably a whole generation of people that got introduced to Quantum Leap on those DVDs with the replacement music and didn't know any different.
Right. Now, if they ever put the music back, they're like, this is not my Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
It's so emotionally correct.
Yeah.
I don't understand why I'm feeling things now with the right music.
I find this strangely moving. It disturbs me.
This was a comedy. I thought this was a sitcom. I didn't know this was a drama, sci-fi, action, time travel show.
I thought this was a Muzak show.
Yeah. We need Sam to leap back and fix that in the contract for the DVD releases, and then he needs to leap back even further and save all those episodes of Doctor Who that have gone missing.
Rachel, you were reading my mind. You were reading my mind.
We'll know time travel exists when Doctor Who is complete again, because
Yes.
I think that's one of the first things that a time traveler would do.
I would.
Me too.
I wouldn't. I would go to the far, far future, like Alan a space bar.
Where they have already found the new Doctor Who's, restored them, and all that.
Right, because you time travelers took care of that for me. It's
Yeah,
fine.
well.
It's fine.
DeLorean, so you have the better shot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, it's funny. I guess if we digress, but Doctor Who fans did get lucky in that respect because people had audio recordings of the episodes, right?
Mhm.
So at least they have a record of the episodes, even if they don't have them visually.
Yeah.
True.
They took the production photographs and surviving things and reconstructed them. So they're like little audio stories with slideshows.
Yeah.
So
Like a Viewmaster.
exactly. Viewmaster or one of those little record players that had slides on the front in the 70s.
Oh, I had one of those. The Show and Tell.
Show and tell, yeah, that's what they're like, and they're enjoyable, and your brain forgets that it's happening, and you can kind of enjoy the story, kind of like a book almost, or a comic book.
Oh, like one of those early web comics, those Flash comics.
Yeah. So, do you guys know if they're all complete? The audios are out there for all of them, or are we still missing some?
Ooh. That's a good question.
I think there is audio with at least a few stills for pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Because I've watched everything from the first two Doctors, which is where everything, those are the two Doctors where stuff is missing. And I know I've consumed in some fashion every single one of their stories. So what manner that has been over the course of my fandom, I don't quite remember, but I know that I have at least consumed every story in some form or fashion. So something exists so that you technically could say you have seen all of Doctor Who.
There's always hope. But I know, like a couple years ago, they found 9 more episodes, like in Africa or something.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty good. Those, they restored them, put them on iTunes. But I know eventually we'll have them because the radio signals went out into space somewhere. So as long as we can perfect faster than light travel, eventually
get out ahead of them is what you're saying.
Yep.
Ahead of the TV signals. And or hopefully they get bounced off some pulsar or something, or through a black hole and bounce back to us eventually.
That's why you have to go to the far, far future.
So you have the right plan.
And I'm going to follow you. Is there room in the passenger seat of that DeLorean?
For you, yeah, I'll make room. I'll move the hoverboard.
Well, send us a postcard when you get there.
Yep.
A space postcard.
So,
Or at least a password protected file folder with everything for the Doctor Who.
what would the password be?
Jelly baby?
I was going to say Gallifrey, but okay.
Or Gallifrey, that works too.
Two on the nose.
Eh.
Oh, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be Clara. Clara. Anyway.
It's going to be Quarks is what it's going to be.
So what do you think of Quantum Leap?
Hey, Quantum Leap. Are we talking about Quantum Leap?
I think that's where we started. I don't know where we're at.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way this show tagline is. The tangents and squee will continue. So,
Yep. We always work our way back to the main topic.
yep. Eventually, we get there. So, no, this has been fun. This is like I said, this is a topic that's been a long time coming, and I'm very excited that we got to have you guys on and have experts come on and help share in our love and excitement for this show. And
We're not experts. We're enthusiasts. We're just fans like everybody else.
in nerd culture, it's the same thing. So,
Yay, we're useful.
yeah.
Speak for
Excited
yourself.
about something enough, and you can call yourself an expert. So.
I, for one, I'm very honored that you invited us on the show, and I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Well, and I was glad that we were able to have it work out timing wise. I thought maybe for a half second, I'm like, well, we could wait till next year, till the anniversary of the show comes back. But I was like, nah, I don't want to wait. Besides,
Come back for that.
Next week the entire universe is going to become Marvelized. So,
It's a good time to do it.
yes, it's a good time to do it. So, and like I said, in a couple weeks, it's the anniversary. It's the 25th anniversary of the series finale. So, so it still kind of works, anniversary wise. So,
We don't need an anniversary or a milestone to talk about Quantum Leap.
well,
We do it
yeah,
all the time.
that's true. Yeah, it's just it's a happy coincidence.
I don't know if people talk about it as much as you and I do, Chris, but
That's because we make the big bucks to do it. That's
Well,
why.
the big podcasting dollars.
Yes, those tens and tens of dollars that we make.
Yeah, exactly. So if you figure out how to get beyond the tens and tens of dollars, please let us know.
But you know what? Once I crack that code, I'm going to Bora Bora. But no, honestly, it's a good time for you guys, regardless of any kind of anniversary, because I feel like the podcast is hitting sort of a new phase. And even though Matt, Allison, and I are new as hosts, we're enthusiastic about it. And we're also talking about some of the best episodes of the series. I mean, late season 3 is where we are, the second half of season 3, which leads into some of the most iconic stuff that Quantum Leap has ever done.
Mm-hmm.
And we just did Runaway. Next up is 8.5 Months, where Sam is the pregnant woman. That's an iconic episode. Then after that is a fan favorite called Future Boy.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, I just got off the phone. I was on the phone for over an hour yesterday with Richard Hurd, who played Captain Galaxy.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, so I mean, it's just amazing what this podcast has allowed us to do and the people that we get to speak to. And Albie, you have to tell me if this is confirmed, but it looks like a guest host, not just an interview, but a guest host for the Future Boys show is going to be Tommy Thompson, who wrote the episode.
Absolutely.
Cool.
And he contacted us.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
Yeah, he's a great guy. The best thing about this podcast is the friends I've made and the people I've met, the writers, producers. I mean, I sat down and I talked to the 2 creators of the show.
Mhm.
When does that happen in real life? It really doesn't, and
Oh,
it's just amazing. And it just shows that everybody that was involved with Quantum Leap really loved making Quantum Leap and being a part of Quantum Leap, and they're very proud of Quantum Leap. So 20, 30 years later, they'll talk to a kid like me or a guy like Chris about what they did and tell us what they remember. And I almost feel like that was my purpose in life, is to, just have that little bit more of record of what happened. Because, if nobody did this, then all those stories and all those things that people remembered that made Quantum Leap, the actors, writers, producers, special effects people, post-production people, musicians, their stories wouldn't have been told, as much. And it just makes me feel good that so many people love to hear those things, and we're going to just keep doing it as long as we can do it.
I completely agree. It's like when we started, our podcast here, that we did it just because we really enjoyed talking to each other, and we still do. But some of the opportunities that have arisen from us doing this podcast, it's just like sometimes I look at the some of the people we've gotten to talk to and some of the things we've got to cover, and it's like, I shake my head going, we just wanted to talk about Doctor Who and some other things and Star Wars, and here we are almost 4 years and 182 episodes later, and we're still finding things to talk about and cool people to talk to like you guys, and it's just this hobby is wild and weird and awesome, and totally not how I thought it was going to go, but I have no complaints whatsoever, other than I need to buy bigger hard drives, it seems like, on a weekly basis. So
backup, it's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah. Like the cloud, I'm so glad the cloud is as big as it is.
Where it is, but it's huge.
Yes, absolutely. So other than I guess the episodes, the 8.5 months that you now have in the can, as it were, is there anything else that you want to maybe tease or plug for the podcast to entice people to come subscribe if they haven't already? And if not, go do it. You will not be disappointed. I say that totally unbiased.
Barrenspace.com is our main website. That's our production company. We have a whole bunch of different types of podcasts. As Chris said earlier, if people contact me and say, hey, I want to do something, usually I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do that. And so we have a really wide range of shows, from Thinking Outside the Long Box, which is a pop culture comic book show that is pretty much about same as what we talked about, all the cool stuff. And it's great to listen to every week. And we have, of course, our flagship show, the Quantum Leap podcast. There's podcasts on 11/22/63, and I even have a podcast just where I interview my daughter and different people I know. And it just you can find everything at barrenspace.com. Chris, actually, he wrote a novel that I love. Could you tell him about that?
Which one are we talking about?
The one that I love is Seeker.
That's a novella that I wrote about 10 years ago, and I couldn't find a home for it. So with the rise of basically print on demand, I was able to make it into, and I sell it through my website. You can find my website at deflipside.com, deflipside.com. There you will find links to the most current Quantum Leap podcast. You'll see the Quantum Leap radio sightings, and you'll also find my book. It's The Seeker. It's about a time traveler who gets caught fighting a genie with an invisible man. And and there's also segments of that radio show that I mentioned called The Flip Side that I do here on Long Island. And it's just about geeky stuff and science stuff and nerdy stuff. And, if you like genre and you like science fact as well, I do it all. So that address again is deflipside.com. But I would encourage everyone to go to barrenspace.com, see all of the great shows that Albie produces, and directly to quantumleappodcast.com to go to the Quantum Leap Podcast, like the internet home for that. And, of course, you can find all the shows on iTunes and Stitcher and all that.
Sit back and listen.
Yeah.
Like I said,
they're long. They're long. They're not for the faint of heart.
I love long podcasts, so it seems to, based on the podcasting circles that I am in for the quote-unquote professional podcasters, are all like, it should be, as long as somebody's commute to and from work is. And I'm like, no, I need hours and hours at a front of a computer and waiting for either the phone to ring or somebody to send in an email asking a question. So, unless I'm doing something that actually involves audio, I need entertainment.
Right.
So
spring is coming. You guys are going to be out working in the yard. You're going to need hours and hours of uninterrupted entertainment for that.
Exactly.
Where we fill that niche.
Exactly.
We fill in the barren space that is the internet.
Yeah. I mean, you could fill, a whole day's worth of housework and yard work just with the three episodes you've done for A Little Miracle.
Yeah.
Oh God. I'm sorry.
I asked everybody to go with that. they're still against another version.
Yeah, I'm telling Albie, you and I, we might actually come to physical blows.
Well,
I think it's time to put A Little Miracle to bed.
The writer of the episode, I don't know if you know this, Chris, the writer of the episode contacted me and wants to talk about it. So I
ain't hosted it. I just ain't hosted it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're seeing behind the curtain.
Well, I don't. For better or for worse, I don't remember the other two episodes of Did You Talk About A Little Miracle? So to me, even though you repeated some of the segments in this last version, it was
heard everything.
Yeah.
On that last
wrapped in the second version, wrapped in the third version.
Right. That was like a 17-hour episode, I think.
Yeah, it was.
Albie's going for a 19-hour episode next time.
Well, I think we need to have one episode where we just constantly add to it. The George Lucas, constantly change it and update it. Of course, have the originals available.
The
but
Lucas cut of A Little Miracle.
6-hour experience for A Little Miracle, they can.
There you go. That's singular vision, people. This is why Albie's the big boss.
Well, is there anything else you want to plug or any other social media? This is your chance to pimp out whatever.
My blog, my ramblings, my thoughts are on albie.ws.
And like I said, deflipside.com. You can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/deflipside, on Twitter @deflipside. Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I will accept your friend request.
So yeah, follow us. And also facebook.com/quantumleappod.
Oh yeah, you got to like us.
Oh yeah.
Gotta like us. Like us on Facebook, everybody.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you for having us on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. No,
It was a lot of fun.
This was
I
a lot
love
of
talking
fun.
Quantum Leap, and we appreciate the opportunity to do so with such a fun bunch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hold on just a second as we wrap up our show on our end here. And speaking of social medias, if anyone happens to stumble across us, you can always find links to everything on our website, which is the5ishfangirls.com. There you can find links to all of our social medias, our Patreon. You guys have a Patreon, right? Quantum Leap Podcast?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Cheers.
Tens and tens of dollars. If you have $1 or $2 or $10, tens of dollars, you can go to patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast. We have a lot of exclusive content there. We have high quality episodes. So I think they're MP3 320 kilobit, is it? The highest you can go. And stereo. And there's behind the scenes videos I just put up of the editing of the whole episode of Runaway. So that's if you want to watch videos of somebody edit for hours. Hours and hours.
Okay, let me see if I can rescue this. Allison, Matt, and Chris are currently brainstorming on how we can come up with fresh content for the Patreon supporters as well. I mean, we're sort of still finding our sea legs. We've only hosted 3 episodes together so far, but we've already come up with some ideas. So watch that space, because I think it's going to become even more dynamic than it already is. So if you want to, again, check that out. It's patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast.
Cool. So go throw them, a couple of bucks, and then, find us and throw us a couple bucks if you have a couple bucks left over. Split those dollars up. We'll happy to take any money you'll throw away. Tens of dollars in podcasting, everyone. So our Patreon, our Amazon affiliate link, and our merchandise link is on our website as well. And then you can always contact us via all the social media channels. So awesome. Well, this has been lots of fun, and you guys hold on for a second, and we'll do some post recording virtual paperwork here real quick. So with that, I think we shall sign off for this week.
This is Brittany in Bethlehem saying goodnight.
This is Holly from Wisconsin saying good evening.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. My hand link won't work. Gushy! You have been listening to the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. Any and all movies, books, games, and other forms of media mentioned are owned and operated by the respective copyright holders. No copyright infringement is intended or implied.